Well, welcome, Texas Patriots. This is Erika Hatfield. I am your Convention of States State Director, and with me, I also have Al Torres. Tonight, we are going to interview Chad Prather for Governor of Texas. The reason we are doing this is because we are sharing how to interview candidates for elected positions. And so that's a part of self-governance. And so we're trying to encourage self-governance. But just before we begin, I'd like to explain Convention of States is an organization that is based on Article 5 of the Constitution. The Article 5 tells us how we can place amendments to the Constitution by proposing amendments at a convention of states. There's a part A and part B of the Article 5. Part A says Congress can do it, and Congress has done it 27 times. Part B says the states can do it. So our goal is to get to a convention, and our mission is to grow the largest grassroots army of self-governing citizens, because when we do get to a convention one day, then those proposals for amendments must come back to the states to be ratified. What that means is they go through the House and the Senate to be approved. And so in order to push those through the House and Senate, we need to have a large grassroots army in place because, as you can see right now, pushing anything through the House and Senate is a difficult thing to do. So welcome, Chad Prather. And Al, would you please introduce us to Chad?
I'd be happy to do that. Chad, thanks for coming here tonight. A little about him. Chad is actually called the modern day Will Rogers. He is equally at home on stage or on screen, musing on pop culture topics, from politics and family life to whatever inspires him on that day. His hilarious YouTube feeds are picked up by hundreds of thousands of fans as well as media. He's been on CNN, Fox News, Blaze TV, and much more. Prather counts more than 1 billion views received alone on Facebook. He's fast becoming the face of every man and conservative common sense voice. Through the power of social media, he may also be one of the most important topical humorists of these current turbulent political times. Prather believes that the great state of Texas should be a leader in the United States and #1 across all categories. But unfortunately, Texas is no longer the Texas that most Texans think it is. That's a tongue twister. He believes that the trend must change by putting Texas first. So please welcome Chad to the call tonight. Thank you for being here, sir.
Thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to being with you guys.
So, I think I'll go ahead and launch off with the very first question, and I'll make it, it's a hard-hitting question. Why are you running for governor?
Well, at the end of the day, look, people with that are citizens who have some stake in the game, who have a vested interest in the future of this state, have got to get involved, right? So back in July of 2020, July 2nd, I was in South Dakota when my phone went off and my news notification told me that Greg Abbott had passed down another mandate, another shutdown, and deemed certain businesses and individuals, non-essential. And I just kind of had enough at that point in time. And with my voice and my platform that I have, I've been fortunate enough to build and grow by God's grace. I just said, I've had enough. And it's time for citizens, people who are not career politicians, to get involved in this process and make a difference and put Texas first. And so I made an announcement on Twitter, had no idea that the thing was going to go as crazy as it did, but it did. And I meant what I said when I said on July 2nd of 2020 that I'm going to run for governor in 2020 in the state of Texas. And we got a lot of grassroots support behind us, people saying, yeah, you really should do it. And then there were a lot of people who said that, since I'm a humorist, they were kind of waiting on the punchline. They were kind of waiting on me to say, hey, I'm just kidding. A lot of people have accused me of this being some form of a publicity stunt or something of that nature. It's not. I don't joke around when it comes to Texas. I'm very serious about the state of Texas. And I'm very passionate. When my convictions take over, it really becomes a consuming thing. Texas has been good to me. I wouldn't be where I am in life if it weren't for Texas. I'm very thankful that God put Texas in my life and put me in the life of Texas. So I'm running because I want to get government out of our life, bottom line. I think that government's gotten too big. It's been too big for way too long. We woke up on September 1st with 666 new laws in our life in the state of Texas. That's an interesting number. And I didn't go to bed on the last night of August thinking, man, I hope I wake up tomorrow with 600 new laws in my life, more things to regulate me. We're seeing, we heard Jen Psaki say on, the press secretary say about the Biden administration that he wants to fundamentally transform the economics of America. That's interesting, interesting statement. What she means is they're trying to find excuses to spend more money. Fundamentally transforming the economy of America includes, in their mind, putting $6 trillion more in debt on us. But the federal government has gotten so out of control. I believe that Texas, and this is a long answer to your question, but it makes the point. I believe Texas is the only state that's left that has the ability, has the size, has the economy, has the equipment, has the will, has the people, has the legacy to put America back on track. And that's why there's a target on our back. I, for one, I just can't sit back and let that happen. So to the degree that I can use my voice and platform in running, by God, I'm in this thing, in it to win it. And there's a fire that burns inside of me. I'm more highly motivated today than I ever have been for the state of Texas. And I can't unsee what I've seen. So here we are. We're in the middle of this thing. But ultimately, I want to get government out of our lives.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Long answer is a good one because it tells us more about why you're in it. And before I let somebody else get it, since I've got the mic, I'm going to go ahead and ask you just one more. It's kind of important, and that's about the Texas border. It's truly a crisis right now. And what I want to know is, what would you propose that the current governor do to stop the influx of people that are headed our way? Or let me put it another way. If you were in charge right now, what would you be doing to stop people from coming across our border? We hear that we got over 50,000 at least marching our way.
Yeah, there's far more than that coming, obviously. I'm on the phone with folks at the border every single morning, some on an official capacity, some on a non-official capacity, unofficial. The unofficial is far more fruitful in terms of what we find out that's really going on. We have this mass caravan that's coming, both from Central America and from Haiti, as we've seen. It's a troublesome thing. I keep telling people that that we can't solve complex problems and still be politically correct. And I don't believe in political correctness. I'm not apologetic about that. We're in an invasion. And again, Texas has a target on her back right now by the federal government. Biden administration wants to see Texas weakened to become another California, Illinois, New York. We all know that. We see what's going on. We see the images from Del Rio and other places. It's horrible. Sometimes those politically incorrect solutions sound simple, but they're hard to get through politically, right? We do need to enforce the laws on the books. I would make sure that we're doing everything within our capacity to make sure that the laws are being obeyed, not the least of which in allowing our law enforcement officers to honor their oath and actually do their job of enforcing the law. Right now, that's not happening. We see that in terms of the National Guard. We see that with our DPS resources, both material and human. It's not being utilized in the way that we believe it should be. I also believe that besides disincentivizing the reasons that so many people are coming illegally into this country, we've got to stop coddling them. We've got to turn the lights off, so to speak. We need to both economically, housing, insurance, healthcare, feeding them, all of this welfare stuff that we're giving these illegals. We've got to cut that off. We've got to control our roads and our highways. At the end of the day, the state does have the power to control that. We saw that Greg Abbott bowed under the pressure of Merrick Garland just a few weeks ago whenever he said that he was going to start targeting automobiles and transits that could possibly have illegals inside of them. And Merrick Garland said that is unconstitutional and potentially dangerous and could target Latinos. And we saw what happened. Greg Abbott caved under the pressure with that. Mm-hmm. We've got to enforce our own roads. And another thing we've got to do is we've got to empower Texans. We've got to empower Texans. This is our state. Washington, D.C. isn't coming to our rescue. This is your land. This is your property. We've got to make sure that we empower Texans. Not, we talk about building a wall, and I think we do need a wall. And there's the resources there to build a wall. But there needs to be a human wall. There needs to be a human wall. We need to equip the state guard. We need to go back to a constitutional word that people feign at, the word militia. We need to equip those men and women who are willing to stand and defend. And also, as I said, Texas citizens. The battle is coming our way. In fact, one of the heads of the Haitian migrants said that we're coming and we're prepared for war. I don't know at what point in time we're going to wake up and realize that this is a violent encroachment. And we are in a battle. Automatic machine gun fire is hitting the ground in Texas every single day coming from Mexico. The cartels in Acuna alone across from Del Rio are making $25 million a week through human trafficking, organ harvesting, sex trafficking, fentanyl, opiates, cocaine, all of these different things. We've got to shut that down. We've got to press the federal government to name these cartels international terrorist organizations. We have the power at the end of the day to declare our own sovereignty, defend our sovereignty as a state, make sure that we are the ones legally, we have the right to control our borders. We have the right to make sure we control who comes into this state. The federal government may control naturalization, but we as a state can control immigration and who comes across. We've got to enforce those laws and make sure that it stops. Listen, to the point, if we took our law enforcement and our citizens and we stood on that border one day and said, you're not coming across today, you will not come across. The phone's going to ring in two places. One, it's going to ring all over the south of the border. Within 24 hours, it'll resonate with the cartels all the way to Costa Rica. They'll want to know why their package didn't get across. The other place the phone's going to ring is in Washington, D.C., because the federal government's going to say, what the hell's happening in Texas? And we're going to say, we the people have stood up and we've decided that this is our state. And we're tired of the encroachment. We're tired of the abuse. For lack of better analogies, this is like a mother who is allowing a stepfather to abuse her daughter, right? This is what's happening. The federal government is having free reign over Texas right now, and it's time we as Texans stand up against that and take care of our own business.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Erika, I'm going to let you go with the questions you have next, and then I see we've got Erika and Rosa. Edna, you would be up first, and Rosa after her. Erika.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and let Edna start. So Edna, go ahead, ask one question, please. And there you go.
Mine's kind of an extension of what we were just talking about with the border. You talk about enforcing the laws. What laws are you talking about, and how would we go about it?
Well, just the sheer fact that we are releasing illegals into the interior of our state and into our nation, and we're the ones responsible for it, that's illegal. I know that, we don't have the authority per se to handle what federal agents are doing on the part of Border Patrol and ICE. But what we're doing right now, our DPS is actually meeting these folks as they come across the border and watching them until Border Patrol shows up, and Border Patrol just acts as an Uber driver to take them to a processing facility where they get a slap on the wrist, get processed, and they get a court date that's 2 years out. And in most cases, especially down in the RGV, they're getting those manila envelopes with a note on the outside of it that says, I don't speak English, help me get to my plane. And they're flying somewhere to the interior of the United States. At what point in time do we tell DPS, no, you don't stand there and wait for Border Patrol to show up. You turn them back right now at the border. You turn them back. You cannot stay here. It's time to go back across.
Thank you. Rosa?
So I just still want to know more about it, but
I'm sorry. Oh, okay. I wanted to ask this question, and as a Convention of States communications coordinator, this is specifically very important to me. And I please understand, I'm asking this in all due respect. So this is in no way trying to put you in a spot. However, I watched you in an interview on YouTube with the, I believe it's the director for Texit. And I noticed that you discussed it a little bit and possibly showed some interest in it. Is that something that you still support, and would you support as governor, or would you be willing to listen to potentially moving, since we do have the Convention of States, we have a sunset clause, but that is something that we want to see through. So let me know what you think of that, how you would handle that, and where you would see us moving forward.
Yeah, no problem. It doesn't put me on the spot at all. What I want to see is multifold. First of all, I want people to understand what exactly Texit is. Texit isn't just necessarily secession from the Union, but it is a way for that. And what I I go back to what I said just a moment ago. Texas is the only state left with the size, leverage, economy, and people that can truly put Washington, D.C. and the United States back on track. We've heard Colonel Allen West say, so goes Texas, so goes the nation. We've heard Don Huffine say, so goes Texas, so goes the free world. I would echo those same sentiments. My goal is not secession. My goal is to get America back on track. We're the only ones who can do that. But to the degree that we can leverage ourselves and our size is to that degree is the only way we're going to be able to do that. When we're sending $160 billion a year to Washington, D.C. in order to have 2.5 million unelected bureaucrats dictate to our lives how we're going to live, that's not freedom. I have people all the time who say, well, we want to make sure that we remain the United States. Well, we're not united. Let's be honest, we're not united. At the end of the day, you're not united with California, you're not united with Illinois, you're not united with New York, and honestly, you're not united with Washington, D.C. They do not represent us. They don't care about representing us. All they care about is serving their own purposes, staying in office and lining their pockets and monetizing everything in sight. Power is corruption in Washington, D.C. We know that. We're not united with them in any way, shape, or form. So that being said, what I want, and what I alluded to with Daniel Miller, the president of Texas National Movement, what I want is to be able to put the power back in the hands of the people. If the people of Texas say we want to vote on a bill such as 1349, which is the Texas bill, then I am not going to stand in their way the same way that I wouldn't stand in their way when it came to the GOP priorities that were ignored in the initial legislative session. I don't think the governor has the place to do that, doesn't need to do that. We've got to get past this idea that these elected officials are, quote, leaders. They're not, they're servants, they're representatives. We put them there to serve our purposes and to be our voice on a larger scale. So to that degree, I do support those issues. If that's what the state of Texas says they want to do, I want to help them guide their way in determining their own destiny and being able to legislate themselves without this overreach, federal overreach coming out of Washington, D.C.
Thank you, sir. Susan, you're up next, and then Tim, you're after her.
Hello, Chad. My name is Susan Hamilton. I'm kind of curious about the electrical grid and what would you do with that? And how can we get you to a meeting?
Well, one of the things that it's interesting, ERCOT, exposed something interesting, that debacle back in February. First of all, what I've discovered is there are a lot of Texans that didn't know what ERCOT was. When I made comments about it, there were people around the country who on social media like to give me a hard time and try to ridicule me and say, oh, you poor Texans, you couldn't handle a little cold outside. I said, well, it wasn't that it was cold outside, it was cold inside. That was a problem. And we discovered that not only is ERCOT being mismanaged, but it's being mismanaged by people who aren't even in our state, in some cases, not even in the country. If we're going to truly own our own Texas electrical grid, it needs to be owned, managed, and done properly by Texans. We need to be, again, the owners of our own electrical fate. Now, one of the things that we are the second largest producer of lignite coal. We don't have great quality coal, but we are the second largest producer of lignite coal in the United States. We have dormant coal plants that are sitting there that are not being used because we've bowed to the tyranny of green energy and ideology that's presented itself as policy. So whereas, when that happened, rather than relying on solar panels or wind turbines that were frozen, that were going to be our backup, all we had to do in that case, in my opinion, was be able to crank up those coal plants and turn them on and let them go. But they weren't. They're lying dormant. And so therefore, we didn't have the backup power that we need. I'm going to go out to, one of the things I'm going to do is, to your question, in a nutshell, we've got to fix that mismanagement. We got to make sure that administration of ERCOT, I do like the concept of energy independence on the part of the state of Texas, because we don't have to depend on federal government and the other networks that are out there, but it's got to be managed better. And I think it does need to be managed by Texas for Texans. I'll be out in West Texas next week. I'll be in Midland having a lot of meetings with the oil and gas industry folks out there. Oil and gas, unfortunately, gets a lot of bad rap these days. But let's face it, we've got a legacy, we've got a history, we've got a great legacy in regards to being the nation's producer in oil and gas. I think we account for 46% of the country's oil production, as well as about 30% of the natural gas that's marketable. So there's a lot of things. There's no reason. I mean, it's humiliating in my mind that we had the debacle that we had with ERCOT back in February, when we are a supplier for the nation and really in many cases for the world. I mean, 31 refineries here in the state. We supply the world in energy making products and energy making goods. And yet we bowed down, and 25% of our energy production was being done by green energy, which is unreliable and absolutely an ideology that they turned into a policy in order to look woke, if to use a phrase. We got to get away from that.
Okay, so how do I get you to a meeting?
To a meeting? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Well, the same way they got me to this meeting. Shoot me an email and let's go.
Okay.
All right, Tim, you're up.
Hey, Chad, I'm glad to have you here.
Thank you.
So I'm going to ask a couple of questions. The first one's coming from Elizabeth. So, I'd like to have a second go at it as well. So Elizabeth is wondering if you've read the Republican platform and what in the platform would you change?
I don't know that I necessarily would change anything in the Republican platform off the top of my head. I have read the Republican platform, and a lot of people try to. I'm one of those guys, quite honestly, that I'm as conservative as it gets, right? I believe in small government. I really do. The issue that I keep talking about when it comes to the Republican platform is I don't think the people who have the power to do anything about it are reading it. I don't think that it's anything that they're seeing as a priority right now. When you have, yes, I've read it, and off the top of my head, I don't necessarily know what I would change about it, other than I want to put the power, back in the hands of the people and get it away from these legislators. When you say you have this 87th legislative session, which was touted as the most conservative legislative session in the history of Texas. Well, so was the 86th, so was the 85th, and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, conservative priorities, I don't think were met. So in that regard, I think that we need to make sure that we're putting people, and I know you didn't ask this question, but this is my conviction. I think we need to make sure that we're putting people in there that are going to read it, going to honor it, and going to take it to heart. Because at the end of the day, I'm not here to pander. I'm not here to, people say, well, what about, you got to appeal to moderates, you got to appeal to folks on the left. No, I don't. I don't. But listen, if I wouldn't be a conservative if I didn't believe that was the best and most successful path to go.
Okay. So this is going to be from me. I'd like you to comment on, what I call the woke agenda. So that includes critical race theory, comprehensive sexual education, history revision, gender dysphoria, and modification.
Every single one of those things has no place in society. They really don't. Not just conservatism or from the right-leaning side of things. They have no place. Not in America. They have no place. Look, one of the priorities we've got to do is we've got to protect our children. Personally, and I want you to hear me when I say this and understand where I'm coming from. I think the public school system is an indoctrination camp. I believe that it's probably too late to save it. We've allowed the Dewey man system of humanism and education to run amok, and we don't, as parents, have control of our children's education anymore. Hence the reason they're calling people that show up at school boards and protest issues about their children's education domestic terrorists. They're parading some old philosophies in front of us. They're just rebranding them in things like critical race theory. Race theory or critical theory has been around for a long time. It's Marxism. Okay, it's just a branding of Marxism. The fact that they're even parading that in America should be a joke. It should be laughed out of any organized school board or council that's in America. Unfortunately, we're entertaining these ideas because it's just an outcropping of what we've seen, and that is this indoctrination of socialism that we are spiraling downward into in American culture, unfortunately. We can't allow, as I said earlier a couple of times, we can't allow ideologies to dictate our policies. We can't do that. Nothing good has ever come out of socialism. When we identify socialism, Marxism, or communism, it needs to be labeled as such, and it needs to be absolutely accursed and anathema from our American society, and certainly here in the state of Texas. We should have no place in that. We have to protect our kids when it comes to life. I believe we have to protect our kids when it comes to gender modification. Listen, if you're an adult, you're 18 years old, you can go and die for your country. I don't care what you do in the operating room. But until then, we've got to shut down these clinics and stop allowing politicians to take money from these lobbyists that absolutely are funded by this atrocity that is gender modification, and that's absolutely what it is. I think that any society that fails to defend the most innocent among them, and that in this case is our children, and specifically our unborn, I think loses the grace and providential hand of God, and that's a conviction of mine that I've held my entire life. We've got to do everything we can to protect our kids. We've got to protect their lives, got to protect their minds.
I appreciate it.
I'm
And,
going
uh,
to,
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Erika.
yeah, I'm going to go ahead and chime in. There's this horrible practice, unconstitutional practice called property taxes. So I wanted to know what you would do about this unconstitutional practice.
Well, there's a lot of things there that I still don't know, quite honestly. And I want to be honest with you, until we get our hands on it, we don't necessarily know what we're dealing with. I know that it's real easy for a lot of folks to just flippantly start spouting off statistics here and percentages there. But anyone who was, if a surgeon were to walk into an operating room and my daughter had a malignant tumor that had wrapped itself around a vital organ, I would not want that surgeon to walk in the room and have a flippant attitude about how easily he or she was going to remove that tumor. To me, property taxes have become a cancer in the state of Texas. Quite honestly, they're not just unconstitutional, they're unbiblical. Whenever, and again, I'll bring my faith into this, whenever God gave his people a promise, the promise and the inheritance was a land, and that land was to be theirs, their children's, and their children's children. We have 6th, 7th generation Texans right now who are ranchers, and their kids don't want the land. They don't want it because they feel like it's not profitable anymore. They feel like they can't afford the property taxes, and they've never truly are going to have the opportunity to own it. And they feel like illegals are taking it away and usurping it anyway. So that's a shame when we're trying to give away the promise of land to our children and our children's children, to that next generation. And they're saying, nope, we don't want it. To that degree, yes, I think there are a number of things we could do to lead from the top down when it comes to property taxes. Since Greg Abbott has been in office, he's increased spending by $48 billion. That's problematic. That's trouble. We've seen an example, just like the federal government, the government here in Texas has increased over and over its spending. Our government has grown, and we've demonstrated this expansive, indebted form of government, and that is trickling down to our counties and our local municipalities. It's time for us to cut the fat. It's time for us to cut the spending, and it's time for us to lead by example of saying, hey, we want to actually be conservatives. Most of us, we call ourselves conservatives, but let's face it, we've let the government get so big. It's like the blob that's consuming everything in its path, that if suddenly tomorrow the government were made small, we wouldn't know what to do with ourselves. I believe Texas high school football is not only a legacy, but it's awesome. But we don't need $60 million football stadiums for our kids to play in. We don't need these crazy multifaceted multiplexes that we're building and spending these property taxes on. At the end of the day, if a local municipality, if they want to do these things, they put it to a vote, they let the people decide on that. Once the people decide on that, then they're going to own that. But at the end of the day, we've got to show from the top down that we're not about spending, we're not about increasing the debt, we're not about doing all of these things, and ultimately get to a place where we put a couple of things in places, we change some things around, and there's little things that, again, there's certain, not little things, but there's certain things that we could do to get money from other places while still maintaining our legacy of no state income tax, and almost immediately reduce this property tax, and ultimately with the goal of getting rid of it. But we've got to face it. This, to just go in there and just start slashing away, is going to be dangerous to Texas, is going to be dangerous to its economy. And anybody says differently, I just don't trust.
Thank you. So Lamar, you're up.
Hey, Chad, thanks for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
So what's interesting is we just talked about property taxes. I heard you mention funding the schools, which majority of your property taxes go towards that. And just bear with me and follow me through my circular logic. But ultimately, all of those things, trying to eliminate property taxes, trying to fix the schools, to me, everything leads back to one common problem. That is taxpayer funded lobbying. And that's something that we fought for in this last legislative session. And we couldn't even get it out of committee, as far as I know. Never made it to the floor for a vote. And they basically, put it on a death sentence. And the reason why I say that that's the ultimate problem is that if I go and ask for school choice, if you want to call it that, and I go to fight that, I'm going to fight the teacher unions, but I'm also going to fight the school districts, and the school districts are using my money to pay for lobbyists to fight me. In the same thread, if I have a problem with my property taxes, I go and I want to fix that. I end up fighting my money again with the lobbyist that's representing that taxing entity. So if you could kind of help me, I mean, is that something that you're aware of, and how do you suggest we go about getting that problem solved? Ultimately, where I'm not fighting myself and my own money through these entities.
So if I remember correctly, the elimination of taxpayer funded lobbyists was the 8th priority that was on the list. I could be wrong on that, but it was one of the priorities. And it's interesting that these lobbyists, it's kind of written into their job description. They know that politicians are going to say, oh, we're against lobbyists, we got to get rid of them. And then when they get elected, they don't do anything about it, because let's face it, on both sides of the aisle, they're the ones who are lining their pockets and their offices, their incentives, their legislation, everything else with these lobbyists. It really, I have choice words for this situation, but it really, it winds up punishing you, again, the taxpayer, the citizen, the person who finds themselves shadowboxing with themselves and not doing anything to move forward in any way, shape, or form. Because you're fighting with yourself and you're funding the battle against yourself. This has got to be dealt with. This has got to go away. We're seeing too many things that are being locked up, too many good things about the state of Texas that are being locked up because these lobbyists that are coming in here and they're controlling the purse strings and therefore controlling what passes through, what gets focused on legislation. Look, go back to the issue with gender modification. Why do we have to go to a special session to discuss gender modification of children under the age of 18? That doesn't make any sense to me. That's lobbyists, right? Those are donors. Those are big money donors. Those are lobbyists. I am proud to say that running, as I am, as a citizen, as a businessman, coming from the unique perspective that I do, somebody asked me a couple of weeks ago at an event, they said, how do we know you won't get bought out? And I said, because I enjoy being politically incorrect too much. I love the freedom of being able to tell it like I see it and speak my convictions. I can't stand the thought of being bought out. To the degree that somebody can control your tongue, they control your life. And I just don't like that liberty being trampled on. So, we jokingly say that we're as grassroots as it gets, which is politispeak for saying we're broke, right?
So speaking of that, how are you getting your money? I mean, that's one of the things that's come back. You mentioned the gender mod guys, and they've given money to some other candidates. If you know, I'm sorry, I don't mean to step on your.
No, well, I can thankfully and proudly say that we haven't received any money from anybody like that. We don't have any big donors. We're grassroots. Look, I am blessed with the good fortune of being able to have a pretty good reach and platform and voice already built in just by the nature of what I do in the world of entertainment, social media, and also having a talk show and having done radio and so on and so forth for a number of years. I can get a lot further on the dollar than a lot of these guys have. I love to give Don Huffines a hard time about his road signs, his billboards out there. It's an ongoing joke with us. I tell him, I say, I'll be riding down the road and I feel like the Lord's looking over my shoulder, and I look up and it's Don Huffines. He loves his billboards and I appreciate that. We're not doing things like that. What I tell people, I said, they got telephones and television. We got teleperson. So we're out there, I'm canvassing every county that I possibly can. I want to get to all 254. I think we've been to about 130 so far. So we've got a little ways to go. I'll be on the road tomorrow, headed to Colorado City and spending some time out there. And as I said, I'll be in Midland and Odessa next week and so on and so forth. I'm hitting a lot of counties. But at the end of the day, I don't want to be bought out. And when I say that, I don't mean bought out. I just don't want to be leveraged. I don't want anybody feeling like they've bought my voice or bought my direction or anything else. We can do a whole lot more with $1 than these other candidates can do just by the nature of what we're building right now. I have the conviction that if it takes tens of millions of dollars to get somebody elected, And they're going to spend that much money on a campaign, which is money that technically is not theirs. Guess what they're going to do when they're in office? They're going to spend that kind of money, which again is not theirs, to get what they want passed and taken care of. I don't like that philosophy of government. That's too big. That's too corrupt, in my opinion, no matter how well the intentions are. I want to be able to look the citizens of Texas in the face when I go to these events and I sit in a room with several hundred people and be able to know beyond the shadow of a doubt that I got a pure heart when it comes to Texas. This isn't a stunt. This isn't something that this is obviously is not a get rich scheme. I wish I knew how you can get rich and run for office at the same time. If so, I write a book about that. But you know, we're pretty proud of the fact that we can do what we're able to do. And it's a dangerous game that's out there. I've seen some of the donor lists of of Greg Abbott's, and I've been made privy to some of that in some ways. I won't say how, but it's kind of frightening, to be honest with you, where that money's coming from and why. And it's going to continue to happen because, let's face it, even some of the most leftist causes will still continue to donate to Republican candidates because they want their tentacles in everyone. And that is the reality we see. But back to your original question, we've got to face head on this lobbyist situation. If not, we're going to continue to see bureaucrats appointed. We're going to continue to see government get big. We're going to see spending out of control because, let's face it, these elected representatives have been given a carte blanche, blank check to go out and do whatever they want to do, and it's going to be funded by lobbyists and special interest groups. And I say to that, we can't do that anymore because it's going to create an untenable future for the state of Texas.
So along those
Thank
lines,
you.
who has whispered in your ear, let me give you some money? Have you had any lobbyists?
Nope, not a single one.
No, okay.
Not a single one. You see, here's why. Here's the perspective. Here's where we're coming from. So, you know, my conviction and my passion, and those who work with me, the folks who are, quote, on my team, we love Texas. And here's my perspective. Winning an office is not going to make me love Texas anymore. It's not going to make me look away. If I lose that office, it's not going to make me look away from what I've seen. I have seen some very bad things, and what I've seen, I can't unsee. I am in this fight for the rest of my life for the state of Texas, to get government out of our life, to hold the government there, to hold their feet to the fire and keep them accountable and be a thorn in their saddle, so to speak. Because at the end of the day, folks, what we've built, what we have, what we're heading into is jeopardizing our legacy. It is not something that we can hand off to our children and say, hey, here's the great state of Texas. It's bad. So no, nobody has. I wouldn't allow that to happen. I have people who will walk up to me at events and they'll hold out their hand as if to hand me a check or cash. And I say, don't give that to me. I don't even touch that. Because again, I don't even have access to the campaign bank accounts in this regard. Because again, for me, that's not what this is about. And so I'm in this fight for the rest of my life, whether I'm in this race or what I may be doing. I guarantee you from now on, and it ain't going to take a lobbyist to motivate me to do it.
Tim, you have a question?
Yeah, I do. So this is kind of getting closer to my immediate circle of friends. I've got a number of friends that are pilots. They fly for American, Southwest. They're receiving letters saying if they don't take the jab, they're going to get fired. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on the vaccine mandates, and then go further into that, about fascism, and companies trying to dictate how, Texans are going to live their lives.
So that's the unfortunate thing, is we kind of dug a hole, didn't we? Right? When the governor came out last year and unilaterally and what I consider dictatorially decided to shut us down without any legislative approval or any counsel in that regard, he just made that decision. Now he's trying to make that decision again and say, well, we're not going to allow employers in the state of Texas. Well, if you've truly meant that, then why isn't that being brought up in this legislative session right now? It's not, right? Let's sign that into law. Let's make that a real thing. Unfortunately, we're in a situation where we are in an at-will state. That means if they don't fire you for not getting a vaccination, they can fire you for wearing the wrong shoe color. They can pick a reason to do that. We've allowed that kind of overreach to happen. We've got to protect our workers. We've got to do that. And one of the things we got to do is we've got to hold these companies' feet to the fire. Again, it's all about accountability. Greg Abbott has thrown the door open to some of these big companies in Silicon Valley, Facebook, Tesla. Tesla's just announced that they're moving all their headquarters to Texas. Sounds great, doesn't it? When Google and Amazon come here, that's jobs for Texans. Well, is it? Because as soon as they start mandating vaccinations and folks say, well, I don't want to do that, you know what they're going to do? They're going to reach back to Silicon Valley, to the people who are indoctrinated and inoculated from California, to come in here and take those jobs. They're going to bring with them not only their influence and their money, but they're going to bring their ideologies and their votes. So we've got to push through in terms of legislation. We've got to de-incentivize these companies who are passing this kind of policy within their companies. I believe in letting private companies run their business their way, but let's face it, we're talking about something that is not only unconstitutional, but it's illegal. If I am an employer and I say to an employee, hey, you need to let me do this to your body or else I'm going to fire you. Well, you'd sue me, right? It would be a public embarrassment. You would sue me, but now we're going to say that about a medical procedure. You've got to have this medical procedure in order to continue working for me. That's an absolute joke. It's a farce. It's tyranny. It is fascism. It is an overreach. It's something that we have got to put a stop to, no matter what it comes down to. Whether that, look, I'm not an executive order guy. I'm a legislative guy. But, we can do all the political posturing, sign all the EOs we want to, but until that thing goes through legislation, we say, no, that is not going to happen in the state of Texas, and make sure of that. And then we hold the Fed to their feet to the fire, again, keep them accountable. I'm going to use that phrase a lot because let's face it, these folks who are under federal contracts and these folks who are, federal employees, this EO is not even going to apply to them. So it's a hole that got dug, and that's going to be a hard one to dig out of, unfortunately.
Edna?
And that's Kim, right? Was that Kim that just asked the question?
No, Tim.
Tim, I'm sorry. Did Tim have a follow-up question on that, or we good?
I don't know. Tim, do you have a follow-up question? I'm sorry.
No, we're good. And I'm definitely going to pass the word to my buddies. One of them's putting his house up for sale right now. The other one just doesn't know what he's going to do. So
it's a horrible situation. And again, we are watching dictatorship. We're watching tyranny at every level happen, all the way down to CEOs and presidents of companies up to the president of the United States. At every level, we've created these little tyrants, and it's out of control.
Yeah. We the people need to stand up and just say no.
We do. So. We do. I mean, I appreciate what the airlines are doing. I appreciate what these pilots at Southwest. I hear rumors of others doing it. I met with the head of the employees for Southwest this morning. They're having to deal with this because, let's face it, OSHA is a federal agency. They're under a lot of pressure to do this. They don't want to force people to have vaccinations. They don't want to do any of this stuff. But thank God these pilots and these employees and these air traffic controllers are standing up, because you're right, Tim. I don't know why I want to call you Kim. What the heck? Sorry. But anyway, Tim, that's the thing. We, the people, have got to stand up and say, absolutely not. We're not going to put up with this kind of nonsense.
Right.
Okay, Edna.
I'm in Odessa, Texas. So
I'll be at the Rusty Bucket next week. Okay.
Well, what day?
Thursday.
I'll look at that anyway. And what time and everything. But my question is, I have an interest in the oil and gas industry out here, just simply because I live out this way and have a lot of friends here that have depended on it for years. And I think it's an atrocity that we're not using our own oil and gas in this country when we got plenty of it, and we're going to foreign oil. So
right.
What's one way that Texas can combat that stupid idiotic thinking?
Well, you're right. I echo your sentiment in that regard. And again, we have got to reclaim our place of energy independence. Texas is at the forefront of that. As I said earlier, we represent almost half of the nation's oil consumption. There's no reason we should be going overseas. We saw energy independence under the last presidential administration. And now we're pandering again to the globalists once again and going outside of the country. We've got to do that. And one of these things we've got to stop doing, and I think a big thing, because again, we keep making ideologies into policy. We got to stop doing that. We got to stop demonizing the oil and gas industry under this woke concept of green energy and global warming, climate change. I don't even know what they're calling this religion they worship anymore. But that's exactly what it is. It's a religion. And we've got to stop pandering to that and allowing that. Look, again, be politically incorrect, be unapologetic. We're going to use our oil and gas industry. But right now we're not doing that. Let's face it. You go out to the man camps and guess who they're housing? It's not oil and gas workers, it's illegals. So that is a perfect example of how we have stopped putting their emphasis on that industry. We got to get back to that legacy and stop apologizing for it.
We have about 5 minutes left. So Rosa, go ahead and ask your question. I just wanted to let you know, Chad.
Thank you.
Okay, so I just found out today that AECOM, I don't know if you know about AECOM, they're one of the largest architecture engineering firms in the world. They have over 30,000 employees. Their headquarters are currently in Los Angeles. I used to work for AECOM, and when I moved here, I moved to other employers. And I just found out they're moving their headquarters here to Texas. Now, AECOM is about as liberal as you can get in a corporation. And they have just announced mandates that every employee has to get the vaccination by November 6th, I think.
November 8th, I think is when it is.
Yeah, and if not, then they're going to not only lose their job, they're not even going to be able to file unemployment. What do you say to folks of me who came from California? I left California 10 years ago to come to Texas so I could become Texan.
Yeah.
So what do you tell people like me who fear these liberal companies coming in to Texas to turn us blue?
So just as I said that we have got to de-incentivize this illegal invasion at our southern border, we've got to de-incentivize these industries who are coming to Texas and making literally billions of dollars off of our good nature and our good business and our good economy and our good incentives for doing business. We've got to de-incentivize that, because if you're going to come here and you're going to operate again under your ideologies, that's not business, that's ideology. And we've got to put a stop to that. I go so far as to say there's certain, foreign entities as well. I mean, why are we selling land to the Chinese government? That can't happen. Again, I understand a free market. I understand citizens, but we need to do our due diligence and make sure that these companies here are going to represent what I consider to be the spirit and business of Texas. Texas is a spirit. It's not caught. I mean, it's not taught, it's caught. You either get it or you don't. And let me tell you, if we're going to continue to dilute the spirit of Texas by the way we're allowing people to come in here and run our politics, run our business, run our e-commerce, run our tech, all of these things, we're not going to have a Texas anymore. And that goes as well to this medical tyranny that we're seeing on the commercial and professional level as well. We got to stop it.
Thank you so much. So if you could tell us how we can follow you, not just contact you, but follow, like, where are your events? How can we find out, like Edna was asking, when, where in Odessa that you're going to be?
So we have a ton of events. I'm in a lot of places. I'm spending a lot of time on the road, and you can go to Prather2022.com. And we have an events page there that we try to keep up with as much as we possibly can. I'm out on the road a lot. I encourage people. We have a lot of fun. Look, I'm an entertainer as well. I'm a guy that comes at the world from a humorous bent. I don't make any apologies for that. I know when to get serious and I know when to have fun. And I've made a living having fun. So if you want to have fun with me, and it's quite informative as well, watch me on the Chad Prather Show. It's free on YouTube every single night. Well, Monday through Thursday. And very informative in terms of what I'm doing. But Prather2022.com. Hey, and again, to the point that we're having fun, you can even go to Beto22.com. It still comes to my website. Listen, we're ahead of the game in regards to that. We're not playing by the gentleman's rules in this regard. I want to keep Texas red, folks, and I've adopted this policy of ABA. When it comes to real conservatism, anyone but Abbott. I don't say that I'm running against Don Huffines or Colonel West. They're friends of mine, by the way. I'm proud to say that I'm running alongside them, and I think we all three have the same goal in mind, and that is to primary Greg Abbott with a true conservative that wants small government, that isn't bought out, that truly wants to get government out of your life. And quite honestly, we need to make politics boring again, because we have given celebrity status and big voices to what I consider to be political morons like the Beto O'Rourke's and the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortezes and the rest of the squad and Joe Biden, and so on and so forth. We got to put a stop to that. And Texas is the only place, I believe, that can realistically do that. And I'm tired of people comparing us to Kristi Noem in South Dakota. I don't want them comparing us to Ron DeSantis in Florida. And God bless both of them for the work that they do to pursue and protect liberty. But you know what? We're Texas. We're not Florida. We're not South Dakota, and we don't want to be. We want to be Texas, and we want to keep that heritage, that legacy, and that identity alive. And I tell everybody wherever I go, I said, there are great names in the history of Texas. The Bowies, the Crockett's, the Houstons, the Austins, the Travises. But we're still writing history, and I hope that our names are on that epitaph of legacy that we leave behind as well, that we did something great for the state of Texas. And we made her number one, not one amongst, her 49 sisters, but the one that matters. And let's make Texas a priority again.
We appreciate you coming tonight, Chad.
Thank you. I appreciate y'all's work. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Good night.